guys, welcome to another episode of On the Road from Off the Cuff. Today we have a really cool kind of on-site, behind-the-scenes access to Spencer from Aloha Watches. Go ahead and introduce yourself, sir.
Hello everybody, really happy to be here and looking forward to the conversation.
Cool. So we've actually just had a little bit of brunch action here in Southern California, and I have to say, guys, delicious, quite tasty. We actually just had some really interesting conversation about Brussels sprouts and poop, so good stuff on that side. So you guys really missed out, but you know, we'll get into what you guys are here for, which is talking watches. So he actually, you guys might recall, I actually reviewed his debut timepiece, which I thought was an absolute killer. So let's go ahead and kind of talk about that piece.
Yeah, so this is the GMT 40 that I've got on here, and this is the blue variant, and I also have a black variant as well, which I don't think I sent that one in. I think it was just the blue one. And then coming up, we've got this one is in production, and so hopefully that will come sometime this year. I don't want to give a firm date because, as you guys probably know with how this works, they get to it when they get to it. But it should happen this year, and for those of you waiting for that one, it is in production.
Cool, cool. So we spoke a little bit kind of off camera about your journey and kind of as an enthusiast coming into this, and kind of how you felt the market climate was, and kind of where you fit in and where you wanted to fit in. So could we expand a little bit on that here?
Yeah, sure. I mean, a lot of guys, and you probably know this, we get into it because we can't quite find what we're looking for. And for me, how I came up with this was I wanted to have my daily piece that I could wear every day with a nice Swiss-made automatic movement, so that'd be an Etta or a Salida. And then I wanted a design which was a little bit cleaner than, let's say, the Omega Aquaterra, which I like, but it's a little bit bulky. And then the design isn't quite to my liking, so that's how this happened.
Very, very cool. Yeah, I think it's a really versatile piece. And it's you can tell it's obviously like inspired by a certain, I guess, an era or a certain aesthetic, but not a particular model, which is something that I think not enough micro brands take the time and really invest the money and the thought into, is really creating something new that still fits into a particular, like, very recognizable niche. So can you talk a little bit about the choices maybe of offering this as a traveler's piece, as a GMT, versus maybe just another slim three-hander?
Sure. Well, there's a lot of really awesome three-handers out there, and so kind of to find my niche, and I love GMTs, I do travel a lot. And so that's kind of why I chose the GMT route, was to differentiate myself. And again, there's a lot of bezeled options out there. Obviously the most notable is the Batman's really popular, and there's a lot of folks that are kind of going down that road. So I wanted a non-bezel version that I could wear every day. It kind of, as you mentioned earlier, if you want to take a step back, it was modeled after kind of the Omega Aquaterras of the 80s. Right. But of course, as you mentioned, you got to be careful, at least for me, with getting to, I think, how do you call it? You still, like you mentioned, you want to have some of those classic elements, but not just copy something. So the lugs aren't twisted, but there is a very nice chamfer on it. And so, and again, as you kind of look at the elements, you'll see some of the brands that I really like. We've already called out Omega, and you can probably figure out some of the other ones as well. But as we talked about earlier, I think what's really nice and what's really difficult for a brand owner is to come up with something original, even though you're using those classic elements. And fortunately, I think I was able to do that.
For sure. All right, so here we are in a little bit of a little move here to kind of check out some of these in a little bit more detail, and actually tell a little bit more the story of your brand and kind of how it all came together. So I'll go ahead and take a close look at these. Go ahead and just give us a couple talking points as to you know, the thought process and even the actual physical process of kind of piecing everything together and creating such a really, in my thought, my views, a very recognizable timepiece.
Sure. So first thing that we talked about before, and I'll just start with the black variant here. For the black variant, some people might wonder why I went with Roman numerals on the inside of the dial. And I was over in Switzerland for a month, and all the clocks over there are gilt, and they all have Roman numerals. And so somehow that got, and actually a lot of them have the sun and moon on them as well. And so that really got into my, I guess, my mind. Mm-hmm. And so that's how that one kind of formed that way when I did the gloss dial with the gilt markers. And then the blue sunburst, that's just kind of my, as I mentioned, my Omega Aquaterra, I think it's the 2503, that was my daily. And then I just wanted to kind of pair off that and then put a GMT in it. And so that's how that came about. And then this guy was actually just an experiment to see if I could make a gradient dial. And honestly, it turned out so well. I think a lot of people were waiting for this one, which is taken away from my current sales, which makes me a terrible businessman because I need to sell these first. But I'm making this one too. So that's kind of how those came about. And then for styling, you probably notice on the inside there's the circular. One of the things which is important for me in design is balance. And so I think, and again, I don't know what this is called because I'm a former financial guy, so I'm not necessarily a designer by trade. So if I'm screwing this up for you designers out there, I apologize. But for me, it's really important to have a balance of the elements, which I consider, probably get in trouble this day and age for saying this, but masculine and feminine elements. And so, yeah, so you've got kind of the batons on the outside, and then on the inside you have the circular features, which I think give the watch a really nice balanced look. And so that's kind of how all of those features came together.
Nice. Well, yeah, I mean, these guys are seriously gorgeous. Now, as far as picking out a strap option, something we did cover in the full review was the fact that you were actually using B&R bands, and from what I understand, there might be a little story to that. So go ahead and kind of give us that little tidbit.
Yeah, sure. So part of my quest to do the best that I can, I actually commissioned an Italian-made strap with a very prominent provider, and honestly, when I got it, theirs is better. So I was like, why reinvent the wheel? Go with, you know, the guys that have been making really high quality, nice products, and called them up, and they were able to, you know, fulfill what I needed for these. So I'm very grateful for those guys, and yeah, that's how good their products are. I couldn't make one better.
Nice. So big shout out to B&R Bands for that one.
Yep.
All right, we made it to the bar.
Yeah.
So actually, you know what, let's probably talk a little bit about your choices as far as that dial, balancing it out. One of the things I really liked was the choice to do actual circular cutout, which I think is something a lot of people don't do, but looks so stinking good. And the nice thing is it actually really helps when you're looking at the date from an angle. It helps you kind of not see some of the unfinished or also adversely the other dates when you look at it. So yeah, let's go ahead and kind of start there at the date and work our way around the dial.
Yeah, sure. So as you mentioned, the date cutout, and that's just meant to match with the circular theme of not only the entire circle, but the dots, and then also the second hand. This is something that not everyone knows, but the ball on the second hand actually eclipses the sun and moon perfectly.
Nice.
I did calculate that. So if you look at that, and it's small, but yeah, the calculations are there, so that this little ball that's traversing also perfectly down the middle, so that also hits the date window dead center. That's all calculated. And so that's part of that circular theme that is on the inside. But yeah, if you watch here, I know looks like the minute hand might be blocking, but it does do a perfect eclipse.
Nice.
And yeah, that was, and then it traverses it perfectly down the middle, so all those dots. And that's pretty high level of OCD to take it to that level, but.
Nice. As far as choosing a black dial and a blue dial, was that more so just your personal preference?
Yeah, I really love blue, and so that's one. And then the black, to be honest, the Black Bay 58 was coming out, and
with
so
the gilt.
yeah, and so that's kind of what inspired that. And I have to be honest with you, Mark, I think that was a mistake too. I'll tell you something really funny about that, and I just noticed there's something on the dial there, so sorry about that. But so with this one, you guys are gonna get a kick out of this. So I started on Instagram. Some of you are following me. Not great at social media, but when I did my first renders of this black one, I got like 100 likes. And I actually thought that meant something. And so that's part of the reason why this one got made, was because I thought that it was gonna sell a lot. And I mean, the guys that have bought it really love it, but so far the blues have sold more than the blacks. So going forward, that's not gonna be a really big indicator in terms of which ones I make. It'll probably be more based on just like the gradient one that's coming for the folks that have seen it that go, I really love that, put me on the waiting list. So
really cool.
that'll be, so I'll do better marketing going forward.
Let's go ahead and take a close look here. Nice, that gradient. Well, so what kind of led you to try that one out? Was there any particular reference that maybe you drew inspiration from?
You know, I mean, I'll be honest, I do, since I'm a GMT lover, I love the Batman, but being a non-bezel, my preference is not to have a bezel, and so I thought, well, what would it look like on the dial? And so that's kind of what I tried, and also no one's really done that. There is an Airman that goes navy to black.
Oh yeah, I have that bad boy.
And it's a nice one.
Yeah.
But this one goes black to a brighter shade of blue, so.
Nice.
I felt like, you know, trying to add something unique, maybe a little different, and so I tried it, and yeah, it turned out really well, so. Any
chances of a future, maybe a polar dial? Those are pretty in vogue right now.
Yeah, you know, it's possible. The only,
not based off Instagram likes, though.
Yeah, not based on Instagram likes. I do have quite a few renders of things.
Oh, cool.
So, which I don't really share, but I have probably, I have a lot of versions that may or may not make daylight, and that is one of them. I'm not sure if I'll make it. One of my challenges is I don't know if this will look as good with black markers, you know, because the white with the black.
Yeah.
I know this looks really good this way, where it's dark dials with the white, or the, you know, the yellow on the black. So that's one of the challenges if I ever would consider that to be honest, in my renders it doesn't look as good as I'd like it to. And it doesn't look bad, but
yeah. Have you tried maybe like a gray tone, or you know, maybe some like, because I have seen some like kind of smoked chrome type metal finishing that could maybe tie in with like more of a silver font or something like that.
Yeah, no,
that could be kind of cool.
Yeah, that's possible.
I think a lot of people miss out on the actual gilt aspect of trying to hopefully capture a little bit here. It's not just a yellow, it's an actual kind of metallic gold, which I think doesn't read as well in pictures, but in person, wow, it's actually really, really nice. So
yeah, that's why that was chosen.
A little bit of that. Yeah,
for legibility.
It definitely also scratches that kind of vintage-esque you know, itch, which I think is great. Well, you have the blue has a little bit more of a more modern contemporary feel. On the other side of the coin, you do have a more vintage kind of vibe. And the nice thing is that the actual typography, the layout and everything, it's really well versed on kind of either way, whether you're looking for something a little bit more modern or a little bit more vintage. And then you kind of play with it even more and take it to something that is really, I think, kind of a work of art here with this gradient blue dial. It's hard to capture on camera, but yeah, I really like how bright the blue is
for sure. It definitely is a strong gradient, which gives you a nice pop of contrast.
Yeah, thank you. And what's cool is most people will gravitate to one, and everyone who has bought the 2 variants that are available really love that variant, and then they tell me, oh, I'm glad I bought that one and not the other one. So so it works. But yeah, hopefully down the road I hope to push the envelope a little bit and see what else I can come up with, and we'll see what the future holds. But for now, this is what's available, and then the gradient one is coming this year.
All right, guys, sitting down with Spencer of Aloha Watches here. Real fun brunch, kind of morning / early afternoon, talking watches, eating food, even talking a little food. But you can ask in the comment section about the Brussels sprouts, because it's interesting stuff, let me tell you. Had some laughs talking about just putting yourself out there in kind of in a market, and obviously with the way the internet is and the way kind of comment sections go and outrage culture, people just being so passionate about things that they don't love and then very casual about things that they do love. It is definitely a tough place. So maybe you could talk about some of your goals for 2020 and kind of where you foresee this going, and I guess what would be your ultimate end game.
Sure, that's a lot.
That's a lot to unpack.
Jesus,
it's a lot.
I don't even know if I've thought that through, to be honest. I think for 2020, I just hope to continue to, get out there, and I really appreciate, guys like you taking the time to sit down with me and help share the story, what I'm doing, my watches, and hope to continue to grow. Got some really awesome customers out there. Thank you guys. Supporters and folks that really like what I'm doing, and so I think long term right now it's just kind of, I think we were joking about this earlier, we were talking about this earlier, it's like as long as you guys and folks out there buy my watches, I'll keep making them.
Nice.
And I think when no one buys them, that's kind of a good indicator, right? Like it's over, so right now,
run. It was a good run.
It's a good run, right? So the dream continues for now, because you guys still want, like what I'm doing, and it's I think there is a market out there, and like I say, I'm trying to do good with my brand as well, which is really cool, and I hope to continue to give back. And as long as all those elements are still there, then yeah, we keep going.
Cool.
And until then, just enjoy it, and looking forward to connecting with people, and really glad we had a chance to sit down. So,
for sure.
Yeah.
Although this feels like a great time to wrap it up, I still do have a couple thoughts on things kind of we touched on that I think could be really fun and kind of interesting, I guess, to flesh out a little bit. Here's almost a little behind the scenes, kind of behind the minds of what it takes to run a micro brand. So many questions. So you guys probably don't know this, or some of you do if you're real avid fans of the channel, but I've actually looked into producing watches, and it's a lot. There's a lot that goes with that. There's a lot of capital to put up, because essentially you're buying everything to resell it, right? You're not to the point where you have this big name brand where you're putting in orders as they come and you're only manufacturing, right? Your manufacturing is not lean. You're buying everything in advance, everything's pre-sale, pre-order. As far as that side of the house and pre-saling and pre-ordering, how did that lead you to kind of the price point in the market where you wanted to be at, especially for your first model?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I actually didn't do a pre-order, which again, I'm probably not the smartest guy, but I figured the reason why I didn't, one's because it's not effective, but no one knows who. I still don't have many followers. You guys go look on my Instagram, it's under 1,000, which isn't very impressive. So I figured even if I did a pre-order, no one knows who I am. So it doesn't matter. So I figured I would take on the risk. Also, for kind of the price point, the quality level that I was going for, which is top grade ETA movements. So for me, it always starts with the movement, because that's where most of the value is. And so from that, I kind of took a look at everyone else in the market using top grade ETA movements.
Yeah.
And then I kind of said, okay, these are kind of my benchmarks, if you will, in terms of price. Of course, some are higher, some actually, I don't think anyone's lower. I think
yeah, for top grade,
yeah,
ETA, GMT movement, like it's tough. I can't even think of a Swatch Group watch that even has the top grade
Right, right.
GMT movement in it.
Yeah, and they you know, the Jazz Master's great, but they're not using a top grade movement, and they're not, you know, they don't have quite all the elements, and so that's how I got. So basically, it was starting with the movement and then working backwards to, okay, what else is out there? And we talk about this. So it's funny because I do have some folks that go, oh, you know, your price, you should be kind of, you know, closer to here or wherever. And it's okay, do some research, come back to me, and you know, they come back, and if they like it, they buy it, because there just isn't at this time too many options. Where I'm priced in, as we talked about earlier, Etta movements are getting harder to source. To the point where Solita now has, at least last I checked, for the GMT movements, has a wait time of 7 months.
Oh, wow.
And so for anyone who's making watches, crazy enough to make watches,
who's thinking about venturing out there,
it's going to make it a little bit even harder, and then, you know, to fulfill. But that's also why I wanted to just make them and not do a pre-order, because let's say it was my first watch, I pre-ordered it, and it took a year or two to deliver. I don't think I'd have very many repeat customers, whereas now you can just go to my site, buy it, and I send it, granted, as long as I have them.
And I think that's something people don't really think about is, if there is no pre-order, essentially you're doing the pre-order up front, right? So that's something that obviously it takes a certain level of confidence in your product and what you're putting out there into the world to really believe in it enough to say, hey, I'm going to put that money down up front and then I'm going to sell the inventory, versus stuff where it's more crowdfunded, right? There's so many different options now, and I think almost oversaturated, where people are probably crowdfunding things they probably should just believe in enough to actually buy up front and then bring it to the market, versus kind of everything is a market exercise. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And kind of where, to a certain point, right, there has to be a cutoff, right? So there's Apple. They gave us the iPhone. Nobody was asking for it. Nobody was like, hey, I need something with a touch screen. I need all these features, right? I need a killer camera. But they created it, and we were like, wow, I never knew that I wanted that, but now I need it, right? So there's not, you know, there has to be some level of that, right? That confidence that you're going to be kind of a market expert and bring something that people want, but at the same time partnering with your target audience and saying, hey, what do you guys want, right? So I think it's really nice to be able to meet in the middle, and I think that that's the one drawback I would say about anything that's crowdfunded, is that they're not doing that, right? They're not fully committing. They're letting the pre-sales do the commitment, right? Which you're letting the consumer do the commitment, and if they want to back you, that's great. There's been a lot of successful brands and models that have gone that route, but I think it's something that's very admirable when you kind of go, hey, I'm gonna put my money where my mouth is. I know that this watch is worth it because specifically I paid for a ton of them, right? I paid for that first run, meeting those minimum order quantities. It's a very daunting thing, and as somebody who's personally looked into it, that's the idea of buying, even though regardless of how small you can get them at net cost, it's at the volume, it's a chunk of change, right? It's not something to sneeze at. So I think that's something that is very cool that you've done, that's actually quite different, I'd say, than a lot of at least one-man shows. There's a couple of brands out there that have, you know, a small group of kind of investors involved and passionate guys, which is more power to them. But I think, you know, for my interactions with you, you know, you've really taken your own brand by the horns, and I mean, even down to which actually would be a good thing to slightly bring in before we close, is your is the charities. Can you tell us a little bit about kind of the giving back side of the Aloha brand?
Sure. So for those of you who don't know, back in September, I actually made a gray sunburst dial, one of one.
Nice.
I have gotten a little heat for those. Sorry for those of you who want one, but I'm not going to make it ever. But it helped raise $25,000.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's
really,
killer.
Yeah, really awesome. It was the only item that was up for. Basically, you got tickets, $100 per ticket, got you into the raffle. We raised $25,000. It was for a girls' school in Kenya. So I guess the other thing that keeps me going, Mark, is if nothing else, I feel like I've done something good.
Yeah,
it's really cool, right? That's
that's like, that doesn't, that's like not a normal thing. Like that is, absolutely going out of your way to do something special for people. And you know, you see bigger brands, they'll kind of be part of these like one watch auctions where they'll do a one-off at a very high level. So I think it's really cool for somebody who's still kind of getting their feet wet in the industry to say, hey, I'm going to jump into just like the best part, I think, about being a brand owner is being able to give back, right? So I think that's really cool and something to definitely look into. I have, you know, gone through your site and kind of checked some of the links in the blog updates, and it's always like really cool to kind of see what's going on over at Aloha Watch. So I'll go ahead and leave actually a link in the comments of this video so you guys can check it out. Also an Instagram link, so maybe we can get him over, you know, maybe let's get above 1,000.
That'd be a good start.
Let's keep it going, because guys, meeting genuine people, you know, like Spencer, and you know, people that are brand owners that share in kind of this, you know, crazy, you know, watch craze that we love so much. It's really fun and really interesting, and I just always kind of hope for everyone's success, because it, you know, to probably quote the guys from Notice, which I think they quoted someone else, but you know, a rising tide raises all ships. So I think that's just a great way to look at it, and kind of the more successful this space is, and as somebody who definitely shops, a very large portion of my collection is within this space of those kind of higher quality bang per buck micro brands. And guys, bang per buck doesn't mean cheap. It means you're getting a lot of value for what you're putting into it. And I think really something that personifies that is with a brand like Aloha, which isn't just, which also it is very cool font, very cool brand name, and the marketing strategy aside, but it also is very cool because the guy behind it obviously is super genuine, and I've had a lot of fun having brunch with him and bringing this conversation to you guys. So definitely let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked the video, please do hit like, and if you haven't already, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.